Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
And you got Luke.
Luke, we're talking about engineering the perfect pizza pie today.
Really? Was that what it is?
Perfect pizza? Engineering the perfect pizza.
I feel like you kind of said that with like a little Italian-ish.
Italian.
Can you not say pizza pie without saying it's
pizza
a pizza pie?
It's a pizza pie. Hey, it's me, I'm Mario.
So before we start, do you think that Chicago deep dish pizza is pizza? Go.
Oof. Is it pizza? I don't know. Is it delicious? Heck yeah.
Oh, I'm not denying. There's no denying the deliciousness that is Chicago cheese pie, but I don't know if I would call it so. I just recently watched.
That was well said.
In preparation for this, did you ever hear the Jon Stewart rant about Chicago pizza versus? He's a New Yorker. He is a big Chicago. It's a big Chicago versus New York. It's like this 7-minute rant he did on live television about Chicago cheese pie. And it was like, I don't believe it's pizza. I do think it's delicious and I like it and I enjoy it. But to call it pizza, I think is a bit of a misnomer. And I'm sorry if we're going to lose audience members over this, but it's just,
we've lost them over worse things.
I have to draw a line, James.
Okay. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not calling it pizza, but I do love it.
Okay. The next question I have for you.
Yes.
In order of importance, what would you say is most important? The dough, the sauce, or the toppings? Could you do a good dough, good sauce, bad toppings?
Myself, dough, sauce, toppings. Dough is most important, then sauce, then toppings.
You and I are right on. You and I are.
My
exactly
wife
the same.
probably goes dough, topping, sauce. She doesn't like sauce on hers so much.
Okay. Julie's the same way. Julie's very similar. She doesn't like it. She likes very little sauce on her pizza.
I dare say they're lucky that we stay with them, but it's fine.
Very.
All right. So before we get into making the perfect pizza pie, I can't go through a episode without talking about a little bit of history,
and
right?
I'm sure there's a war involved somehow. I'm sure that
the pizza trade came about because of a war. Actually, there might be a war connection. Let me just blow through this history real quick, because it's pretty long, and I'll try and trim it out. So history. Italians, shockingly, are trusted to be the inventors of the universal flatbread, and the precursor to the pizza are Neolithic. They're basically flatbreads heated on rocks. They're made up of flours, spelt, barley. I think spelt's actually used in pasta as well in Italy. Developed in a bunch of different places. It was developed in China. It was developed in the Americas. Making flatbreads was pretty commonplace. The Italian word for pizza first appeared in Latin parchment a long time ago. The Codex Diplomaticus Catanus.
Yeah, you nailed it.
And this was reporting out a list of donations by domains and the bishop to the bishop of Naples. And it documented the date of 997 AD, which fixed a supply of 12 pizzas every Christmas Day and Easter Sunday. So not a war tie-in, but maybe keeping the peace tie-in.
Okay.
How about that?
Okay,
so
the
12 pizzas of Christmas. That is a very famous thing, apparently. So since the 8th century BC, the Greek colonies in southern Italy were creating things. They produced plankuntos, flatbread, grain-based sourdough covered with oil, garlic, herbs, onions, minced meat, small fishes, things like that. And it was kind of similar to a Turkish dish.
Okay.
Plato even made mention of these things in his love for this stuff. Italians started making things more exotic when the tomato plant showed up after Columbus was around. But the fruit, tomatoes, were thought to be poisonous, so they weren't used a whole lot to begin with. Turns out they weren't poisonous. I don't know if you knew that. You like tomato? Do you like raw tomatoes?
Oh my goodness!
I
can literally eat tomatoes by just the handful, a little bit of salt. Ugh.
Oh my goodness. Well, tomatoes first appeared in the recipe book, The Gallant Cook, in 1819. So it took a long time for people to really start adopting these. But the first mention of mozzarella can then be found in opera in 1570. So anyways, the story goes that they were starting to make pizzas a little fancier and they wanted to make it represent Italy. And so that's where your traditional margarita pizza showed up because it had your dough, it had your red sauce, it had your white mozzarella cheese, and then it had your green basil or basil if you're in England. And so that was to represent Italy and its flag's colors. And that's how the pizza came about,
I
which
love a
is
good margarita
rather
pizza.
fascinating. Me too. Oh my goodness. Fun fact to store
Shoot.
mozzarella, it doesn't handle low temperatures well. If it's in a refrigerator, it becomes rubbery. It should only be stored in its own way at room temperature for a few days. Sure, I don't have that luxury, but if you're going to do things right, Luke, that's the way to do it.
You ever made homemade mozzarella?
I have made homemade mozzarella.
I've made it, and I forget the stuff you put in. It's called like Ren or the stuff that makes it coagulate.
I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah, you can do it with like vinegar or something like that, or lemon sometimes. And I don't know if I did too much or not enough. It was good. It tasted okay, but it was nothing like a good, homemade mozzarella from the Penn Mac down in the Strip District.
Yeah. So Strip District. Oh, Penn Mac. I love Penn Mac. I'm going to stop there with my history. Again, it was for the Italian flag, paying homage to the Italian queen at the time. There are other types, of course, as well. There's a Sicilian version of pizza. I can't pronounce it. I can't even try to pronounce it, but it's more of like a rectangular flatbread. And this is again with the olives and the sheep's cheese and things like that. It does sound amazing.
So are you
that's where I'm going to stop.
Okay. You mentioned fishes. Are you an anchovy on pizza guy?
I'm not a fish eater. I don't eat
Period.
Fish. Period.
How did I not know this? I've known you for like 10 years.
Well, because I say that and people just assume it's seafood, but I'll eat sushi because I can smother it in soy. I'll eat lobster because I smother it in butter. Okay. It's just like fish and fish fry I don't do.
Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to talk about the actual stuff that makes up a pizza itself and some of like the best way to make it.
Yes.
So we're going to go in order of importance, the way you and I just talked. So we're going to start with those. So let's talk about some dough. So don't mess this up, people.
Don't mess this up.
Don't mess this up. So it's literally flour, salt, yeast, nothing else. When you see these recipes for like olive oil and honey and sugar and all these other crazy, because apparently they think that needs some kind of sugar for the yeast to feed off of. So 3 ingredients, that's all you need. The other thing too that you need to do is you need to learn the metric system. Because most pizza dough recipes that you're going to find are going to be listed in what they call percent hydration. So they're going to say it's a 75% hydration dough. So what that means very easily, if you're using the metric system, you take 1,000 grams of flour and you take 750 grams of water, and that's your hydration. If you had to do that with cups, there's no easy way to do that with volume measurement. You have to do it with weight measurement.
The metric system, can I just say, like, it just makes our kids stupid. 10, 100, 1000, anybody can do that. We need 32.2s and 12s and other interesting numbers.
And if you want more information, make sure you check out our metric versus the imperial system.
Yes,
I think we call it. I'm not exactly sure.
So and also, didn't we do an episode on the science behind baking or something like that?
We did. We talked about that a little bit. So check that out. So don't mess it up. Make sure you learn metric. Don't do volume measurements. Do weight measurements whenever you are making your dough. The next thing you need to think about, James, is the flour itself, because everybody thinks you just drop a little AP flour in it, all-purpose flour. That's what we call it here in the U.S.
Is that what we call it?
You could do that. But what you really want to do is you probably want some combination of a 00, which is super finely ground flour, or you want a bread flour. You would call this strong flour if you're in Europe. They call it strong flour. And what it is, so 00 is typically going to have lower gluten, and your bread flour is going to be higher gluten. If you have a ton of gluten in your dough, it's just going to be a chewy mess, because that's what gluten is. It's the structure that builds your dough and makes it chewy.
Your jaw.
If you have really low gluten, you're just going to have like a cracker style pizza, which nobody likes either. Ugh. So you really want to work with balancing the 00 for the fineness and the bread flour for the high gluten to get that perfect and chewy and crispiness that just is a perfect pizza dough. Kneading. Everybody overlooks kneading, James. Everybody thinks that, oh, push, you're done.
I think they don't need that.
They don't need that. So kneading builds gluten structure. We talked about this during our baking episode, and you literally need to knead. You are required to knead your dough for like 20 minutes. People do like a couple minutes. The easiest way to know is if you stretch your dough and you get a window pane effect, where it becomes translucent, you know the gluten structure is ready to go. So make sure that you do that. When you're doing this, if you don't knead it enough, you don't have the air pockets that the CO2 in the fermentation process is eventually going to transpire in strong enough, and you're going to have a flat, dense bread. That's why you need.
No one wants that.
Kneading. Next thing you do, you got to bulk ferment this stuff. All together, one big blob. There's more, CO2 happening. The fermentation process starts. Then you're going to ball this up into smaller portions, pizza-sized portions. And then you're going to do what's called the final proofing. And proofing is also called proving. It's a step which allows the dough to rest before baking. This is where all the CO2 happens. This is where the yeast starts to eat the sugars in the dough, and it's going to increase in volume. It should always be done in a refrigerator. It should be cold, because the slow fermentation enhances the flavor of pizza dough.
All right. How about that? Luke, I didn't know you knew so much about pizza dough.
Oh my goodness. So I was making a lot of sourdough, and we were making a lot of pizza dough early on in the pandemic. So
yeah, that's good stuff. Before we move on to what's next, the sauce, I suppose, let's take a break for a word from our sponsor.
I'm guessing Chef Boyardee or Chef Boyardee, as it's really
Chef
called.
Boyardee. No, we don't have a sponsor.
DeLello's?
No, no one. We have 2 shout outs, though.
Who do we got?
Numero uno, and I apologize. Thagmal.
Nailed it.
I hope. Fan writing in from Jamaica. So probably loving life a whole lot more than we are. But for some reason, the stickers are being sent to Canada. So I'm not sure how this all works, but that's fine. Loves the podcast, encourages us to keep spreading our knowledge. What little that might be, but what knowledge we have. So I appreciate that. Second shout out goes to Trevor A., a mechanical engineering student at the San Diego State University.
Oh, go Wood Ducks.
That's right. Is a lifeguard, but that's what he does to be able to feed himself, pay rent, good stuff. But recently has been stuck on the golf course, doing golf course duty because of the Rona,
Oh, yeah.
Swimming pools, they don't really like people hanging out at. I mean, I can only feel so bad for somebody who's in like 360 days of sunshine every year, but I understand the difficulty of washing golf carts and picking up balls and stuff. I'm sorry about that. Anyways, keep on listening. He also wanted to figure out a way to sponsor an episode, but I told him, I got banned from Venmo for reasons we won't mention here, so not an option. If any of you want to tell us great stories of your life, say hello, tell us about your education, get some stickers, get a shout out, anything of that sort, why don't you email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and make sure you write those reviews. And as always, you can tell your smart devices to play the Unprofessional Engineering podcast.
Nice. All right, moving on, Luke.
Moving on, James. So the next thing we talked about is sauce is the most important thing. Here's another thing with sauce. Don't mess it up. The same thing is the dough. You know what you need to make good sauce? What? You need DOP San Marzano tomatoes. You know what DOP is, James?
No.
DOP is the certificate of authenticity or origin that the tomatoes actually came from the San Marzano region in Italy. So they do this with Parmesan Reggiano cheese, certain olive oil. So if you don't see the DOP symbol on the can, it means it's just a tomato from wherever. And the reason why these tomatoes are exceptionally good is because the soil they're grown in makes them exceptionally sweet and acidic at the same time because of the natural climate and, again, the soil there. Okay. So here's what you need. You ready?
I'm ready.
You need crushed San Marzano tomatoes. You need garlic, preferably microplaned, so it's like basically a paste. And you need kosher salt, nothing else. Those 3 things is all you need to make a good sauce.
You don't use any basil. You don't use any.
I feel like it's the toppings.
Oregano.
You could, but I feel like those are more things that work better in toppings.
Okay,
like,
okay, that's fine.
So, and you have 2 options. I prefer this first one. So I'm a raw sauce kind of person. So you make this sauce and you don't
Do you
cook
like it
it.
Chunky?
Yeah, I like the big chunks of the tomatoes.
Okay.
So basically, I just hand crush the tomatoes. I throw in some microplaned garlic. I put in some salt, mix it up, and I put it on my pizza dough raw, just like that. I don't even cook it. And then just the heat and everything. A lot of margarita pizzas are made this way.
Yep.
You could also take that exact same ingredient list, 3 ingredients, brown the garlic, little Maillard effect in the olive oil, add your tomatoes, add your kosher salt, simmer until it thickens, and then you'll get a more traditional, thick, kind of pasty pizza sauce. So those are your options for pizza sauce. The last thing I want to talk about, and then we can talk about toppings, which you're going to talk about cheese, is actually, let's talk about the toppings now, actually, because the next thing I talk about is the heat and pizza oven. So cheese, James, apparently you're a cheesemonger.
So my wife has turned me into a bit of a cheese snob. I'm going to be honest, but I still will take, a plain old block of cheddar and just start gnawing on that. But it turns out that there's more that goes into cheese for a pizza than just slapping some cheese on top. So the University of Auckland in New Zealand did a study to figure out what the perfect cheese is for a pizza. I know it doesn't sound like New Zealand would know what they're talking about, but they did use scientists that used machine vision as their method for analysis.
Okay.
Apparently, this has never been done before, because why would it have been done before, in my opinion? So the scientists agreed to not make it this drag out, that mozzarella should be the dominant cheese that you have in your pizza, which of course that's what we use traditionally, right? But other folks will put other stuff on depending on what you like, but more goes into it than just mozzarella's better. So the researchers were really excited because of the browning and blistering of the cheese as well. So it's not just how does this taste and how stretchy is it, but also how gooey and bubbly does it get on the top as you're baking your pizza pie, which is awesome. Awesome. All right. Ultimately, they broke it down into a bunch of different groups. They studied cheddar cheese for a pizza, which creeps me out a little, Colby, Edam, Gruyere, provolone. And so you'd think like provolone, things like that. Yeah. If you've used these cheeses, you know that some of them don't melt as nicely as others. Provolone doesn't melt, in my opinion, as nicely as mozzarella does. They found that mozzarella had a lot of elasticity and not a whole lot of free oil. So it's really good for browning. And it's also really moist, which is great for getting like those popped up bubbles and like blisters on your cheese. I guess blisters doesn't make things appetizing sounding, but for cheese, it does. On the other hand, like the cheddars and the Colbys and the Edams and other things are kind of tight. And so that doesn't really work so well. Like, how mozzarella you bite and it stretches out. This stuff's kind of like almost like grainy, or it just like bites apart. You don't get that stretch with it.
Yeah.
And so for making the perfect pizza, you kind of have to think about this. They say different cheeses can be employed for gourmet pizzas in combination with mozzarella. Gruyere and provolone can be added to obtain less of a burnt appearance by producing much more free oil. So you're going to have a lot more oily top, which a lot of us will use something like pepperoni that has a lot of oil already. So maybe you don't want that. The color would be more uniform by adding cheeses with low elasticity, such as Colby. So if you're going for color and prettiness, like high percentage of mozzarella is needed. Even if not, you should that should be your dominant cheese and your cheese blend that you're using. Myself, I've tried mixing a few together. I'm always more satisfied with mozzarella, like the sprinkle mozzarella, as well as slices of fresh mozzarella.
I'm a big fan of the fresh mozzarella. So James, are you of the opinion, I have to ask this, that there's no such thing as bad pizza? There's just levels of goodness.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. We're on the same page there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever had a piece of pizza that I'm like, wow, this was the worst ever.
And
I mean, yeah.
And do you also believe in like the specialty pizza? Like one of my favorite pizzas is it's called a super chicken pizza from a place called Berg's here in Bridgeville. And it's like it's a red sauce. It's broccoli, it's chicken, multiple cheeses on top. It is like one of the best pizzas I've ever had.
It depends on how specialty it is. I would say that some like pierogi pizza, which I love.
Pierogi pizza?
Yeah.
That's got to be a Pittsburgh thing, right?
It's a Pittsburgh thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Pierogi pizza, I would say might fall into that same group of maybe it's pierogi pie or something, kind of like Chicago style, but is that really pizza? So that's a debate for another time, I would say.
Okay. So another thing on toppings. So I'm a big fan of buffalo mozzarella. Have you ever had the buffalo mozzarella?
Yeah,
apparently there's these special cows in Italy that make this. They're like it's buffaloes, they're not cows. But a couple of things on toppings that you need to be aware of. Again, engineering the perfect pizza. You have to watch the moisture content of the vegetables you're putting on this.
Heck yeah.
Who wants a soggy pizza, James? Does
Not
anybody
me.
want a soggy pizza? No.
I mean, someone out there's probably
Nobody
wrong.
wants a soggy pizza.
Oh,
so
okay. My bad.
You have to watch like mushrooms. They give off a ton of water. So if you're going to use mushrooms, I like them on a pizza.
You're wrong.
But I would recommend that you cook them first, get all the water out of them that you can, and then put them on your pizza.
There's only one good kind of mushroom on a pizza. Don't worry about it. Move on.
So you have to watch the wet vegetables. A lot of times you want to make sure that you either pre-cook them to get the water out of them or just don't put wet vegetables on them. Also meats. This is where people make some mistakes. And I've seen some videos where people throw raw meats on pizza. And, if you're cooking a pizza correctly, it should be cooked really, really fast. And if you're cooking it really, really fast, there's a good chance that that protein on that pizza, pepperoni, sausage, ham, capicola, whatever you're putting, oh my goodness, I'm getting hungry, does not have the time to cook all the way through. If it's something that isn't a cured meat, it's like a sausage or something like that. So I would recommend you pre-cook all of your proteins that need to be cooked ahead of time before sprinkling them on.
That is solid advice because I have fallen for those traps before. Trust me. And it is not a good sight.
Last thing before we start talking about, I think pizza oven design is where we might be going next. The last thing is you have to. So are you can eat the pizza outside of a restaurant and it's better or the same?
What do you mean?
So my
delivery,
wife,
you mean?
My wife believes the only way you can eat good pizza, like she thinks it changes the minute it goes in a cardboard box.
Oh, I've never thought about it. I usually don't get pizza at a restaurant, so I probably am the wrong person to ask.
So you don't know, yeah. So I'm a big fan of you got to eat it immediately because it does change. You put it in a cardboard box, there's steam and condensation.
Sure,
and all
I can see that. Okay. Very good. Okay, before we move on to like pizza oven design and how those suckers work, let's take a break for this week's Luke's Rant.
Here's my rant, James. Recently, we just launched a spacecraft to Mars. We had a space crane lower a rover onto the surface of a distant planet. This rover has a little
drone.
Has a little drone attached to it. Like the engineering marvels that we've achieved in our lifetime is just mind-blowing. Have you ever tasted gluten-free pizza, James?
Oh my gosh, yes.
It is absolute rubbish.
I even got it at Goat Hill Pizza in San Francisco, which I thought, this is going to be the best one that I'll get. Ugh.
So here's my thing. The U.S. government is spending their money in the wrong places.
It's obvious.
Rather than sending a spacecraft to Mars to not do anything related to pizza, spend your money on making a because I've been gluten-free for about 2 months now because I was having some digestive issues.
You usually do, yes.
And and as soon as I cut gluten out, I feel amazing. All of my aches and pains and stomach and everything else has been it completely disappeared. And I've been doing gluten-free pizza, and it's not bad because there's no such thing as bad pizza, but it's not good.
Yeah.
And I feel like the government needs to intervene, take some of this funding away from, Curiosity and all these different rovers they're sending to distant planets, and invest in something that the American people care about, which is good tasting gluten-free pizza crusts.
Hear me out on this. What if we're on Mars, sending our drone around to spy on the aliens that are making an even better pizza?
That know how to make a gluten-free pizza crust.
Because why else would we be there? I mean, I can think of no other reason.
No other reason to be there. Sorry, that's it. It's a little bit of a funny rant, but it's more that whatever companies are out there making gluten-free pizza crusts, you got to up your game.
Yeah, for sure.
There's so many good gluten-free things out there. You got to do something better.
All right, the pizza oven, Luke.
Yeah,
I took a pretty scientific approach to this.
Let me hear it.
A Russian physicist living in Rome analyzed pizza making and found why wood ovens are superior to electric ones.
You mean like wood burning?
Wood burning.
I gotcha.
Yes, let's hope you're not making an oven out of wood. Okay. They give the perfect balance of well-cooked base, like the crust, as well as the browning of the toppings. This guy's name is Andrei Varlamov. Researches superconductivity, because why wouldn't you do that and look at pizzas? One day he started talking to the local pizza maker, Pizzaiolos, at a cafe that he loved, about the niceties of oven temperature. And he was inspired by this to do an analysis of the heat flow between the brick base of the oven and the pizza dough. So in doing so, he got the help of a material science expert, Andreas Glotz of the U.S. Agrano National Laboratory, and an Italian food anthropologist, Sergio Grasso.
Food anthropologist.
So apparently this was a pretty serious study that
I'd say.
This resulted in a 10-page white paper named The Physics of Baking Good Pizza. I encourage you all to go Google that, look this up. It was rather interesting. A lot of great math that got involved with it. It did things like took into account the heat capacity of things like dough, food grade steel, brick ovens, water, thermal conductivity, mass density. All of these different things were taken into account. And so basically, since we're kind of running out of time, and I know that you have some stuff to say about this as well, what they found is that the pizza guys were like, oh, you need your pizza oven to be 220 degrees C. That's what your pizza oven needs to be. And they were like, well, let's take a look at this. They investigated it, and they found out that through their calculations and everything, they were right. It was somewhere around 210, 220 degrees C. That's where it should be. No, I'm sorry, it had to be 330 degrees C. And they calculated out the scenario, and temperatures that the dough touched the brick oven would be like 210 degrees.
Gotcha.
So the fire was really hot, and that really hot temperature on the bricks would be like 210, 220 degrees. That means that you would let the dough sit on the bricks for 2 minutes. And that 2 minutes was enough to cook it perfectly.
It's about 90 seconds for a good pizza oven.
And what they said the big problem is when you then try and replicate this with a steel oven, you find that if you have it at that temperature, the 330 degrees C, it is going to be like too hot so that it like either burns the pizza or it doesn't, like just what you were saying, Luke, it doesn't cook the toppings or it burns the bottom of the pizza. But if you turn it down so it doesn't burn the bottom of the pizza in a steel oven, it either like is too floppy and it gets the stuff cooked, or again, it's too cold inside of the oven to really cook those toppings as you slowly bake that bread, and it takes forever then. Let's see. I don't want to get too much into the physics because you can go read that paper, and I want to give you some time on that. What do you have to say about this?
So right off the bat, a dome is the best. The reason why a dome is the best is because if you think about the shape of a dome, that heat is actually radiating back down to the pizza surface, we'll call it. The dome also triggers recirculation of heat, so that if you have that fire in the back and you have the heat recirculating with your flue and everything like that, and there's three things that are happening. You have conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction occurs when the floor of the pizza actually touches the bottom of your raw dough itself and creates that crispy mallard effect on the bottom of your pizza. Convection occurs with the air recirculating above the surface of your pizza, and that's what crisps kind of the top of your pizza dough. And then radiation occurs whenever the flames themselves are radiating and browns the edges. This is where you got to turn the pizza a couple times to usually get that nice brown or black blisters around the edge. But don't worry, everybody. If you can't do this because you don't have a $7,000 pizza oven at your home that can get the temperatures of 700 to 800 degrees Fahrenheit, you can kind of do this at home. Take a pizza stone, big, thick pizza stone, the best you can get, or a pizza steel. Put it in your oven at the highest temperature it can possibly be, 30 minutes minimum. So the oven has to be totally, not just when it beeps and says preheated, because that means it's the second you open a door, that temperature is going to drop. It's got to be like a full 30 minutes of preheating. And essentially have your pizza at the highest area in the oven. That way the convection that's happening will hit the top of the pizza. You don't want to burn the bottom of the pizza, like you said, and you want to make sure that top gets cooked. You can also do this with your broiler. If you turn your broiler on high and just let it run for 30 minutes, there's no temperature setting, but if you have a thermometer in your oven, you can usually get an oven up to about 650 degrees with a broiler on high. You got to watch what you put in it, because most cookware isn't good for 600 degrees Fahrenheit. So you got to be careful of what you do with it. So you can do it at home.
That's sneaky behavior, Luke.
Yeah, it's got to be a while with the broiler on. So
one other tip I wanted to cover here.
Shoot.
All the pizziolas say you always come to the pizzeria before 8 p.m. or after 10 p.m. when the place is half empty.
Wow.
And the reason they say that still goes back to these magic numbers we're talking about. The 330 degree C oven, that's the optimal temperature so that they can cook 2 pizzas at a time at 2 minutes apiece. That means they're pumping out like 50 or 60 clients within an hour, right? So they put one in, they pull it out, put it in, like every minute they're basically pulling out a new pizza. So they get 60 people out there. But for the really busy places, they need to have like over 100 pizzas done an hour. And that means the only way to make that happen is to crank the oven up to 390 degrees C to start like throwing pizzas in and out really quickly. So that drops the amount of time it takes to bake, but that means that your bottoms are going to be a little bit overdone, and the tomatoes or whatever on the top are going to be a little bit undercooked because they don't have enough time in there. So always go early on or later in the evening to make sure that you're getting that optimal temperature.
Interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Luke, I had one more thing I wanted to do. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? I'm done. Thrillist, very reliable, ranked the top toppings for pizza. I want to see your opinion. The last place, number 10, pineapple. Followed by ham, tomatoes, peppers, mushrooms, olives, spinach, onions, bacon, sausage, pepperoni. How do you feel about that list?
The top half of the list feels okay, but I feel like there's so many other things you could put on that list other than ham and pineapple and
ham,
olives.
Pineapple, spinach, that all kind of to me.
So
now tell me.
I was going to say, you were probably going to do it. So James, what is your ultimate pizza?
I have it written down. Double mozzarella, extra sauce, pepperoni sausage, jalapeno, banana peppers, crushed red peppers on top. If you have fresh basil, you have to have fresh basil on it.
So you said banana peppers and pepperoni?
Banana peppers, jalapenos, pepperoni, sausage, and then fresh basil if you can sprinkle some.
It's amazing how close yours and I's are. So mine is double cheese.
Yeah. No brainer.
Ricotta. You drop blobs of ricotta on, and you do a spicy pepperoni and banana peppers, or you could do jalapenos. There's this place called Harry's Pizza out near Washington, Pennsylvania here, and they have this. It's the same thing with jalapenos, but I can't do the jalapenos. But it's the ricotta and the spicy pepperoni and the banana peppers. It is literally like mind-blowingly good. Like it is so delicious.
Yeah. Is that your go-to pizza place if you got to choose?
If I had to choose, yeah, that's probably my go-to pizza place. Okay. Yeah.
We order from Fellini's. The pizza's good, but they have hot pepper cheese balls, and so that puts them over the edge. So since they have that as like an appetizer, yeah, it's not their pizza that makes us order there. Alrighty. Awesome. Well, hopefully you all learned a little bit about baking that perfect pizza, making that perfect dough, sauce, cheese combination, learned a little bit about your oven settings, all of those good things. Why don't you just go invest $10,000-$12,000 in a nice domed brick oven and
invite us over
cooking and invite us over. If you want to say hi, you want to talk about our pizza opinions or facts for that matter, why don't you email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com. And until next time,
see ya.